Hi, it's Stacy Maurier here, the founding lawyer of Estate Connection Law Office in St. Albert, Alberta. As many of you know, there are really three pillars to any estate plan, the very basics. There is your will, which is your property when you're no longer alive. There's your power of attorney or enduring power of attorney, which is who can deal with your property when you're alive but just don't know it. And your personal care directive, which is who can make medical decisions for you when you're alive but just unable to express your wishes. And today I'm going to talk to you about personal care directives. Now, the nice thing about personal care directives is you don't need to appear before a lawyer to have that document created. You can actually write it right now in the comfort of your own home. If you go to the Government of Alberta website and Google personal care directives, they actually have a blank form that you can fill out right now. Now, it's not the best because it doesn't cover all the options out there, but it's definitely something to consider if you need to get a personal care directive done and just can't make arrangements to come into a lawyer's office. So, what do you need to think about when you're writing a personal care directive? It's important to think about who you're going to appoint to make medical decisions on your behalf. Now, sometimes that's an easy decision. It could be your spouse or maybe one of your children. But if you have several children, are you really going to appoint them all so they're making decisions on your behalf? If you have one child in Australia and another in South Africa and maybe one that's in Calgary, it may be very difficult for them to all have input on doctor's appointments. And I can tell you the medical professionals will not be thrilled to be talking to three kids and having to get their consent on every decision that has to be made. For that reason, I suggest looking at appointing one child, maybe two if you really have to get their input. Now, if you have children that are all over the world, even if they're medical professionals, this isn't the person you should be appointing. It's going to be really difficult for them to have input and to understand the decisions that are being made on a daily basis in Alberta. So when we're looking at who to appoint, we want to pick someone who is closer to us as opposed to further away. So if you had two kids between Calgary and maybe Sherwood Park, consider appointing the child in Sherwood Park. They're here. They can go visit you and actually talk to the healthcare professionals. And if you're looking at whether to appoint a son, a daughter, maybe it's a daughter-in-law, you need to think about who those people are. If they have a healthcare background, it probably doesn't matter who you pick, because as long as they have the time, they'll have the capacity to make those decisions. But sometime in my experience, some male children don't feel comfortable making decisions on behalf of their moms. They have to see them in all kinds of positions with, parts of their body they've never seen before, and they don't feel comfortable. So it's important to think about that when you're looking at who to appoint in your documents. Now, for our office, we always go 3 levels. So I'd say, my spouse, if my spouse isn't around, it's my aunt. If it's not my aunt, well, then it's my daughter or whatever. That's what I like to do with our documents. But at the end of the day, you can appoint just one person if you need to. But you want to give them some guidance on the types of decisions that they're going to have to make. So are they going to have to make decisions about where you live? Maybe it's your intention that your religious organization has an extended care facility, you want to go there. Or maybe you don't want to go to extended care. You want to stay at home as long as possible. Put that in your documents. As well, what are your end-of-life wishes? Now, for some people, it's very clear. They don't want blood transfusions. They don't want tubal feedings or resuscitation. They essentially, if they drop dead, they want to go. And that's fine if that's what you want. But by putting your wishes in the document, you're actually granting your family the ability to make these decisions and not have the burden of doing something that you didn't want. So take some time and consider what to put in there. Where you're going to live. Do you want medical supports if there's no hope of a positive outcome? Do you want no supports at all? So for instance, some people say they want a DNR, but really if you get an infection, you don't want any penicillin or any antibiotic at all? Something to think about. Put in your documents your views on euthanasia. Right now it's not legal in Canada, but it's coming down the pipelines. And at least if your kids are in a situation where they need to make that decision, they'll know what your wishes are. As well, consider putting compensation in your document. If your agent has to be driving you around town to all your doctor's appointments or paying for parking or wear and tear on vehicles, You might want to consider compensating them for that because maybe they won't have the money to cover those costs otherwise. As well, put in your documents what's going to happen if there's a discrepancy between your power of attorney, which is who handles your money, and your personal care directive. If it's the same person, it's not a problem. But if you've appointed one child on one document and another child on another, there could be conflict. For instance, maybe your child who's on your personal care directive wants you to go to a lavish life estate place in downtown Edmonton. And maybe the child who is great with money doesn't want to spend that money and thinks you should stay at home with health care or home care. I'm not going to say which way is right or wrong, but you can see how there's a conflict. So in that situation, what do you value? Do you want someone to spend whatever money's needed to keep you comfortable? Or is your goal to provide the biggest inheritance you can to your children, and so you don't want any money spent on your upkeep? Or maybe it's somewhere in between. I'm not here to judge, but just make sure that these ideas are incorporated in your document. Because at the end of the day, this is actually what is going to guide your children if you haven't had a conversation with them about your care and they don't know what to do. Look, this is complicated and family dynamics are not easy nowadays. If you have questions or concerns or are looking to write a personal care directive, contact Estate Connection Law Office. We're here to help.